Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Today, justice was served. Justice was served for Angela Craig, whose husband, James Craig, has been convicted of first-degree murder and will serve a lifetime in prison without the possibility of parole. He is serving that sentence for poisoning his wife, Angela. Angela, who is his wife of 23 years, the mother of his children, and the person that he vowed to love, protect, and honor. Instead, he deceived her, he cheated on her, he lied to her, and he killed her. James Craig's selfish and deceitful actions shattered a family, stole a mother from 6 children, and attempted to manipulate those closest to him with chilling calculations. I hope this conviction and life sentence in prison brings a measure of justice to Angela, to her children, family, and everyone who loved her. While no verdict can undo the profound loss they have suffered, today's outcome holds the defendant accountable and ensures that he will spend his life behind bars. We hope this verdict also brings a sense of closure and peace to Angela's family, especially her children, who will live with the unimaginable pain of what James Craig did to their mother for the rest of their lives. Our hearts remain with them, and we are grateful for their strength, their patience, and their trust throughout this difficult process. Next to me, we have our top-notch trial team, who you will hear from shortly, and we have members of Angela's family. As with any case of this magnitude, this prosecution truly was a team effort. I'd like to personally thank the Aurora Police Department, including lead detective Bobby Joe Olson and Molly Harris, Arapahoe County Sheriff Tyler Brown and his team, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and our other law enforcement partners. I also want to recognize my predecessor, John Kellner, who ensured a smooth handoff of this case so that we could be sure to get justice for Angela. Importantly, we also want to recognize the many healthcare providers who cared for Angela Craig, who worked to save her life as she fought to live, and that is as her husband continued to poison her. I will now turn it over to my Senior Chief Deputy DA, Michael Morrow, who will talk about the overwhelming evidence in this case and his fight to secure justice for Angela's family. Thank you.
Thank you, DA Patton. The evidence in this case included 10,000 pages of documents, 2 terabytes of data, and more than 300 witnesses. It overwhelmingly pointed to James Craig's guilt. Clearly, Craig wanted out of his marriage, but was unwilling to face the consequences of divorce, especially a divorce initiated by him. He gave in to greed and cowardice, ultimately treating Angela as an object, an obstacle to the life he wanted. The jury's verdict vindicates Angela's memory from Craig's attempted post-mortem character assassination. The jury said it loudly. Angela was not suicidal. She had no knowledge of or participation in what happened to her, which was that James Craig murdered her. It has been an honor to participate in this quest for justice for Angela, her family, and her friends, all of whom loved her dearly. Next, I'll invite Deputy DA Osama Mughrabi to talk more about the key evidence presented in court.
Now, it's difficult to kind of narrow in on key evidence in this case because, as my colleague just mentioned, there was just so much of it. So I think it's helpful to think in 3 distinct categories that kind of delineates where the evidence came from. There was technological evidence, there was medical and toxicological evidence, and then there was the people, the witnesses who came in and testified. In the technology category, there were obviously those searches that the defendant conducted on a computer in his office. There were communications and purchases regarding the substances that he so eagerly sought to secure to poison his wife. And then there was GPS data from his phone that showed him traveling from the area of his home to the office at key times when those searches were happening. Even showed him traveling up to a medical supplier as he tried to get cyanide over the counter, which was not the way he ultimately secured it. That didn't work. The next, also in that category majority of technological evidence. There were lots of surveillance hours, thousands of hours of footage, both on home surveillance and in the hospital. Key moments from that are when the footage showed the defendant with a syringe, first at home and then at the hospital, which he later admitted was the syringe, the implement that ended her life. The next category was evidence involving medical efforts to save Angela's life, which showed just how hard the doctors tried to figure out what was going on, how inexplicable her illness was, until the story broke and they understood that there was substances, that she was being poisoned. And those medical professionals then made efforts to sustain the samples, the blood samples, and send those off for testing, and then Aurora Police Department followed up as well. And samples of Angela's blood ultimately showed extremely elevated levels of arsenic, fatal levels of tetrahydrozoline, that's the eye drops, and fatal levels of cyanide, again, all of which was administered by the defendant. And finally, that last category is the people that testified. Without fail, the people that we reached out to tell their piece of information came forward and did just that. They testified, gave the information that they had. They talked about Angela as they knew her. Even the medical professionals that talked to her in the hospital came forward and talked about a woman who was eagerly trying to figure out what was wrong so that she could get back to her children, to her family, and get better. Finally, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Prey to say some words on behalf of Angela and her family.
Thanks, Osama. We are undoubtedly elated that James Craig will never be able to do this to another person. I have a short statement approved by my family that I'd like to read. On behalf of Angela's family, we want to express our deepest gratitude to the 18th Judicial District Attorney's Office and the Aurora Police Department for their unwavering dedication to this case. We give special thanks to Assistant District Attorney Ryan Brackley, Deputy District Attorneys Mike Morrow and Osama Maghribi, and Detective Bobby Joe Olson and Detective Molly Harris for their professionalism, compassion, and tenacity in seeking justice for Angela. We are also profoundly and grateful to the doctors and nurses who cared for Angela, her colleagues and friends, and others whose testimony and support have been invaluable throughout this process. Their contributions helped to ensure the truth was fully heard and Angela's memory was honored with integrity. Angela was benevolent and compassionate and devoted to those she loved. Although she was allergic to most animals, she had a fierce affection for them. Just one example of her big-heartedness. She loved her children and with unmatched fierceness was endlessly generous, always on call for her friends and family, offering help and support without hesitation. Contrary to how she was sometimes portrayed during this trial, Angela was anything but isolated. Her friends were tucked away in nearly every corner of the globe. She was intensely dedicated to staying active and healthy, both for herself and her family, and lived life with an adventurous spirit. Whether traveling, getting out to explore, or simply enjoying a good movie or a great book, her faith, love of God, and devotion to her family guided everything she did. With a strong personality, a quick wit, and a famously sharp sense of humor, she made every moment with her unforgettable. Well, this has been an incredibly difficult time for our family. We take comfort in the integrity and commitment shown by everyone who stood with us in pursuit of justice for Angela and her children. We thank you all so much for your support. And Angela, we miss you and we love you forever.
So, thank you, Mark. DA Patton and I joined the office in January of this year, 2 years into the investigation and prosecution of James Craig, and we were immediately impressed by the extraordinary hard work of our deputies, of our staff, the extraordinary hard work and dedication of the Aurora Police Department, and we finished this trial recognizing the extraordinary hard work of the jury in this case. Everyone worked really hard to bring justice for Angela Craig, and we are grateful to the jury's work, to the verdict, and to the family for their patience and support throughout. It's been a long road, and they have never wavered in their belief that the right thing would happen in this case. With that, I'll take some questions.
Can you just clarify exactly what the count 7 was that was added on during jury instruction related to manslaughter or assisted suicide? Was that actually a count that James Craig was being charged with? Can we say he was found guilty on all charges? How do we break that down?
So, last question is an interesting one. You can certainly say that James Craig was found guilty of everything that he was charged with by the state of Colorado. Count 7 was an added count requested by James Craig and his legal team. It's called a lesser non-included. Essentially, they argued that the facts as presented to the jury, all of it through James Craig, through his letters, through his texts, through his words, that Angela inexplicably did this as a suicide or tried to enlist him as a suicide. The judge felt that there was enough evidence for that to go to the jury. Clearly, the jury rejected that. You can say James Craig was convicted of all charges. He was found not guilty of a charge that he asked the jury to consider.
Sir, you talked about it earlier, referencing during the past 2 weeks, some folks had said there's plenty of circumstantial evidence, not a lot of direct evidence. You spoke to it a little bit earlier. Can you speak to what, and was it considered direct evidence? Would you say obviously the jury found enough? Can you kind of highlight some of those points evidential-wise?
So to the extent that there was some video of James Craig handling a particular shaker that contained the tetrahydrozoline, commonly known as Visine eye drops, one could argue there was direct evidence, but it was mostly a circumstantial case based on the fact that Angela Craig, from March 6th through March 15th, just got sick and sicker without explanation, all the while James Craig was ordering these poisons and researching how to order the poisons and how much poisons it would take to kill a person. It is probably the most direct circumstantial case you could ever have. I'm going to let one of my colleagues provide some further light on this question.
One of the instructions to the jury is that circumstantial evidence should be considered the way that they consider direct evidence. That there's a legal distinction there, and the example that it gives is whether you see it snowing directly or you look outside and you see snow on the ground. And so in this case, the jury clearly understood either way what had happened. So the idea that he's searching on a computer and that searches are showing up on his computer, that's circumstantial. But you add in the circumstantial evidence that he also traveled to his office at the same time and that he's doing the searches are happening, helps show that he was doing it. Add in the fact that he's seen by another staff member in the dark on that particular computer inexplicably, that's another piece of evidence the jury can consider. Then the fact that he then immediately afterwards tells her he's going to get a package in the mail and it's personal, don't open it, let him know when it arrives. Yes, those things are circumstantial evidence. It doesn't mean it's not strong evidence. I think that's what distinction should be made here, is that the weight of the evidence was still substantial, even if there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. That's a legal distinction, but it wasn't a distinction that took away from just the strong proof that was found in this case.
Were you all able to talk to the jury?
I'm sorry?
Were you able to talk?
We did not, but I'd highlight that many members of the jury returned back into the courtroom to watch the sentencing proceeding for James Craig, and that's an unusual step. We don't often see that, but these jurors came back to watch James Craig get sentenced.
Can you say, William Walden didn't appear for a subpoena to court. Can you say what happened there?
William Walburn had some health issues that precluded him from coming to court. He did remain cooperative with the prosecution. He just could not make it to court for reasons which we just don't want to disclose.
Can we get clarification on counts 2 through 6? Was that
A max sentence imposed in each of those? Because I had heard 57 thrown out there, but I don't believe they add up to 57 years on top of life in prison.
Mike knows math.
Okay, thank you.
We're bad at math, actually. Lawyers are just notoriously bad at math. It was a maximum sentence based on what the judge believed the available sentence was for each of those counts. So counts 2 and 3 are class 6 felonies. The maximum presumptive sentence is 18 months in the Department of Corrections on each of those. So that's what he got on each of those. Counts 4 and 6 are class 5 felonies. The maximum sentence is 3 years, so that's what he got on each of those. Count 5, the solicitation to commit murder, without getting too much into the legal weeds, it's a class 2 felony, and the presumptive sentence is 24 years on that. And so it's not 57 years, it's whatever that adds up to.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And why don't you speak to the, I don't know if it's an emotional reaction or a prosecution reaction to the fact that her treatment was actively being sabotaged. She was in the hospital. How unique is that? What does that tell you about who this person is?
So we interviewed one of the doctors from UC Health during our trial preparation, and he expressed that sentiment that this man, the husband of his patient, was killing her right in front of him while he was trying to save her life. And one of the things that D.A. Patton spoke to was the great compassion and the great care of the nurses and the nurse practitioners, the emergency room doctors and the hospitalists in this case. All of them remembered Angela Craig. They remembered her of hundreds or thousands of patients they've dealt with from that date to this date. But they remembered her. They remembered her, how she was afraid, how frustrated she was, how scared she was, and how hopeful she was to get better. It was painful to watch them testify knowing how hard they worked to save her life, when ultimately they couldn't because this man who appeared with her was killing her. It was a very emotional factor of this case.
Similarly, as you conducted the investigation, and in the history of the work that you've all done, were you just stunned time after time, revelation after revelation, of the bold nature, the blatant nature of James Craig and what he did? I mean, did it just stun you?
Absolutely stunning. I think that's a word that, I think it's a word that we used frequently. It never stopped getting worse. It never stopped getting more surreal. It never stopped getting more aggravatedly stunning. It's a good way to describe it. There was a moment in court, each of us were put in the position of having to read James Craig's words to the jury, whether they were letters or texts, and it was very, very difficult for us to read those words. It was difficult to read them, knowing what they meant and knowing the effect that he meant them to have on his listener.
May I ask, I don't know if you care to reply, Mark, or the Craig family, but the judge talked about the family's strength and resilience in court. And I don't think I'm alone with being amazed at the composure of the family members in this court. How is it you've held together so well? And it's just remarkable. I don't know if you care to comment on that, but
We had to fight for food growing up.
Well, Mark had to fight for food.
Yeah. I'm in the lower 5.
I just showed up.
I just want to correct what you said, though. We're not the Craig family, we're the Prey family.
I apologize.
It's what Angie would have wanted.
She stood behind us, and that was our job for her, to be her voice, to be her strength, and to make sure justice was done for her.
Ma'am, is it possible to have you stand
Ma'am.
I said Angela stood beside us, and she would have wanted the same for, this is why you don't have me stand at the pulpit, for her. It was our job to be her voice, and it was our job to make sure that there was justice for Angela. So it was not a matter of would we, it was a matter of why wouldn't we.
Hard question, and please feel free to not answer it. Was there a time lag between when the prosecution team learned of these events and told you, was there a timeline? No way, that can't be right. Was there any kind of denial that later had to be proven to you, or?
I can only speak for myself. I think that I knew a lot of the backstory. So for me, knowing her the way I knew her, I knew that her love for life would never be trumped by someone else. She would never leave her children. So as soon as that was presented to me, there was no question.
So I think I speak for my team. We got great strength from the Prey family when we showed up in court every morning and had to walk down that hallway towards the courtroom, and knowing they were behind us gave us great strength.
This is a question for the Prey family as well, if you want to answer it. We saw 3 of the children in court. Can you speak to how collectively, without naming them obviously, they're handling the situation? No? Okay. Sorry.
Oh, Sherry took an interview. It's amazing.
Appeals process, is there any grounds for any kind of appeals you guys are already thinking about in a case like this?
So there will inevitably be an appeal in this case, and we'll stand ready to defend this conviction.
There was obviously nationwide attention on this case, on this theme, if you will. Why do you think this case has garnered so much attention? What about this case do so many people, why does it touch so many nerves?
You know, I think when I'm going to pass this one on to one of my colleagues. I was not part of this case in the beginning when all of this was coming together, and I'll pass it on to Mike.
Well, I'll say I think about Angela Craig every single day. I never got to meet her. And I think people are fascinated because of the absolute senselessness, the absolute heinousness of what occurred. And that there was no way really for her or anyone to see this coming. It's not as though she was engaged in any kind of risky behavior or lifestyle. And not that that justifies anything that befalls anybody who is, but sometimes you can understand that a little bit better. This was a woman who just went to church and took care of her family and should have been safe. Should have been safe in her home with her husband of more than 20 years, the father of her 6 children. She should have been in no danger. I mean, she was physically and mentally well. She worked on those things every day, above average physical fitness, and she should have lived another 50 years at least. And I think people just are shocked that something like this could happen to someone like her. I think that's why.
If I could add to that, I think part of it is just really what we referred to earlier as the stunning nature of this offense. This is Angela's husband is poisoning her, causing her to die a slow death. It wasn't something done in the heat of passion. It was deliberate. It was over the course of days. And then the cover-up afterwards, enlisting his own daughter to attempt to make a deep fake video. To me, that was what was so stunning about this case, and I think that's why it's garnered national attention.
I have one question. It's not only the stunning nature of this, but you think about if not for this, like the Redfords, the office manager. There's so many different. Karen Kane coming forward or something. Can you kind of give us an idea of the heroes in this case who were able, if not for them, she might not have had an autopsy and she might have been cremated.
So certainly the office manager, in recognizing that something was wrong, and the office manager also in her testimony expressed a lot of care and concern for Angela. Dr. Craig, who I think I'm going to call James Craig at this point, he got a lot of texts from people in his life every day. How's Angela? How is she doing? Is she getting better? Have you figured out what's wrong with her? It was the office manager who put it all together and made the right phone call. It was Dr. Ryan Redfern and his wife, Dr. Michelle Redfern, who reported this to the hospital staff, and the hospital staff immediately went into action, and they did what they can do to try to save her life. And it was too late, but they went then and confronted James Craig, and they held him to the truth, which they eventually got from him. And then the other heroes are those who continue to come forward, those who continue to cooperate with the police. Many of them from within the Arapahoe County Jail, and members of their family and people that they were able to contact. People came forward because it just wasn't right. One of our alleged jailhouse witnesses said it was just the right thing to do. What he did to his wife was wrong. It was the right thing to do. So everyone who cooperated, who participated, were the heroes of this case. And I think of those detectives from the Aurora Police Department who got involved in this case in the evening of March 15th and didn't sleep for days and didn't stop working until about an hour ago when the jury came back and found James Craig guilty. So a lot of heroes in this case.
Does this case stand apart for you? This is the most, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is it, if not unusual, the most heinous that you
It's
handled?
I think we can go down the row here and we can all say that as long as we've been in this work, we've seen a lot of really horrible things. This was among one of the most horrible things. And D.A. Patton just alluded to enlisting his daughter to try to help him cover this case up, to fix this case. It was probably one of the more heinous things that I've seen. So seeing no further questions, no further hands, thanks everyone for coming. Eric Ross, our PIO, Jamie Sorrells, myself were available for any additional questions. Thank you.